6. It was betrayal, Juris Khan told him as Atana passed to each a goblet filled with wine. Betrayal from one whom all trusted most. Gregis Mati, his daughter interjected, seating herself on the floor near Kentrell. Her eyes met the captain's, and for a moment, a brief light seemed to shine in those almond-shaped emerald orbs. But then the subject at hand doused that light. Gregis Matsi. My father once called him brother of brothers. He sat at my left hand, as the good priest Tobiah sat at my right. The white-haired lord leaned back, the head of his own goblet cupped in his palms. To them, I gave the glorious task of translating the visions to reality. To them, I gave the blessed task to lead us to the sanctuary of heaven. The mercenaries and the other 2 spellcasters sat on the floor before the imprisoned monarch, food and wine brought to each of them by the graceful and beauteous Atana. After so much bloodshed, so much fear, the entire party gratefully accepted Lord Khan's hospitality. Besides, many questions needed to be answered, and who better than the legendary ruler of the Holy Kingdom himself? Juris Khan very much fit the mold of a leader. Standing, he had been as tall as Kentrell and almost as broad. For one of advanced years, Khan had a youthful appearance and a personality and little sign of frailty. Although his features had become weathered, his strong jaw, regal nose, and piercing green eyes still gave him a commanding countenance. Even his long silvering hair did not age the ruler so much as mark his years of wisdom. Thinking over his host's words, Kentrell frowned into his wine. But the legends say that Mati was left behind by accident, that he spent years trying to join you. Juris Khan sighed. Legends tend to be more fiction than fact, my friend. So you didn't make it to heaven? Asked Sin, already having downed most of his drink. The spell failed? To the captain, the Vishera appeared more disappointed in the fact that the magic had not worked than the fates of the hapless citizenry of Ure. No. We found ourselves trapped in limbo. Trapped in a timeless passage between the earthly plane and our glorious destination. And all because of one man's evil. Gregis Matsi, Atana repeated, her eyes downcast. A tremendous desire to comfort her arose Captain Dumont, but he fought down the urge. What did he do? When the time came for the final casting, the fatherly monarch explained, Tobiah realized that the words did not read right. Their meaning had been reversed. An invitation, not a journey to heaven, but to be thrust down into the pits of hell. Kentrell glanced at Zael, who had been listening as intently as any. The necromancer nodded to him. In many forms of spellwork, to reverse subtly the meaning of a single word is to reverse the effect. A spell of healing can be made to wound further or even slay. Gregis Matsi sought more than just to slay us. Juris Khan murmured. He sought to damn our very souls, and nearly succeeded. The captain thought of the woman next to him, cast down into the realm of Diablo, and shuddered. Had he been able to, Kendra would have taken the foul Gregismati by the neck and twisted tight, until, with his eyes, the sorcerer would have been able to look down upon his heels. He would have succeeded, Atana added, blushing slightly under Captain Dumon's gaze. If not for my father and Tobias. We tried to speak the already spoken incantation, reverse what had been reversed. And so, instead of heaven, instead of hell, we ended up in the middle of a vast nothingness, a timeless realm from which we could not escape. Snorting, quoth Sin Comment. You should have recasted the spell from there. It would have been a simple matter for any well-trained group of Ajari. Much less. Not so simple, my friend. When the priests and mages were all slain by the same spell. A cold look spread over the generally kind features of the ruler of Ure. Gregis planned thoroughly. A single line altered, also drained swiftly the life force of each chanting the spell, except for Tobias and myself. Our superior strength and knowledge saved us, but left us weak. Worse, without the others, we lacked the power to recast it. If not able to recast the spell, Juris Khan and the head priest were at least able to expel Gregismati in the moment of triumph. The battle cost Tobias his life, but by sending the traitorous sorcerer away, they prevented him from fulfilling his horrific plan to send Ure to the realm of the prime evils. And so the kingdom and its people had floated in the mist of vast nothingness, time forever locked, until there came a moment when suddenly the world materialized around them again. The world in deep shadow. No one who had lived his life in Ure would have failed to recognize immediately Grandemir and the shade it always cast upon our fair kingdom. With the belief that the curse had abruptly ended, more than 20 of my people had rushed through the front gate without thinking. All they wanted was to feel the sun, to feel the soft wind. Khan leaned back, more pale than even the necromancer. And what they were repaid with was a death most horrible. Out into the sun they raced, and therein sealed their fates. The moment the light touched them, they burned, like chips of mounted ice, tossed it into a smith's well-heated forge. The hapless inhabitants of Ure literally melted away, their screams echoing long after they had been reduced to puddles that they themselves evaporated into seconds. Some, at the edge, they managed to cross back into the shadow of the mountain, but in doing so, they only worsened their agony, for what had touched but a breath too long still burned away. In the end, those who had managed to halt in time became forced to slay the shrieking, suffering, half-eaten victims. Atana poured Kentrell more wine, giving him a soft smile. However, at the same time, tears coursed down her cheeks. She took up her own untouched goblet and added to her father's shocking tale. We had underestimated Gregismatsi's monstrosity. That vile serpent had left us, no longer part of the true mortal world. Worse, we began to fear that once the shadow vanished and sunlight touched our home, we would all suffer as the first had. But what would initially be seen as a miracle visited the terrified citizens the next morning, for that the first glimpse of sunlight came over the horizon. The world began to fade away. Once more, the nothing of limbo welcomed back the city and its people. Although shocked, all agreed that until a solution could be found, exile remained much preferable to the ghostly deaths they had suffered. All looked to their blessed leader, Juris Khan, certain that he would yet discover a way to freedom. Many even took the escape from the burning sunlight as a sign that heaven had not forsaken them. Somehow, Ure would either return to the moral plane safely or continue on its intended journey to the holy realm. And I determined after much study, Atana's father revealed, that a way did exist, at least to Icarus, without any danger to the real world. For I had also determined that we would be returning there again at some point. With the aid of my precious daughter. He smiled lovingly at the young crimson-tressed woman. Skilled in her own way, I worked hard to fashion 2 unique and mystical gems. Juris Khan handed Atana his goblet, and then, before the eyes of his guests, drew with one finger a fiery circle in the air. In the midst of that blazing ring, a pair of images alternated. A pale crystal, as glittering as the sun-touched ice, with its raven black twin. Never before had there been 2 such perfect gemstones, and Captain Dumont and his remaining men admired and coveted them from the first moment. The key to Shadow, Khan uttered, indicating the black one. The key to light, he added, showing again the icy one. One placed below Ure, in the deepest caverns. The other atop Namir, there to catch the first rays of day. Together to tie the shadow now over us, keep it in place at all times, so that we may stay here while we seek our final escape. And so, when it came to pass that Ure did again appear on the mortal plane, just as Juris Khan had predicted, the plan was put into motion. Volunteers were asked for, brave men, 10 in all. 5 were sent to the depths below, there to find the most dark of dark places, where the shadow had its strongest ties. The other 5 set out to reach the top of the mirror, to position the other gem at a place their lord had determined would be the prime location. In addition to the key to light, the second group also carried a specially designed pair of tongs, so to avoid the threat of sun. Hopes rose to their fullest as the 2 parties started out, for truly it seemed that the prayers of the people had been answered. Unfortunately, no one had counted on the return of Gregis Matsi. It could only be assumed that he had suspected or even detected the presence of those he had so long ago betrayed. When Ure reformed in the shadows the next time, the corrupt sorcerer already stood waiting just beyond the borders. He discovered the attempt to save the kingdom and quickly followed those who climbed the mountain. There, with words of power, he shattered the very top of the peak with a bolt of lightning, slaying the 5. That part of his wicked work done, Gregis Matsi then secretly made his way into the palace of his former master. There he caught Khan by surprise. I had scarce time to look up before I realized that he had struck. When I moved to confront him, I found that I and the chair had become one, and we in turn had become a part of the palace itself. I leave you to sit and contemplate your failures forever, my lord. The foul beast jested to me, and now I go seal your beloved kingdom's fate by seizing the second gem deep below and destroying it as I have the first. The robed figure ran a hand through his silvering hair. A tear slipped from one eye. Understand, my friends, that I loved Gregus as I would have my own son. There had been a time when I thought... He glanced briefly at Atana, who reddened. Next to her, Kentrell experienced an unwarranted pang of jealousy. But that is nothing. What matters is that he intended to leave me there, unable to pursue, while he went to destroy the final hopes of all those who had depended on me. Yet, Gregus Motzi had underestimated his former master. Weakened, yes. Trapped, surely so. But Khan had another source of strength. He had the people, and his love for them. Khan drew from that now. Drew from all of Ure. When he struck at the mocking Gregus Motzi, he did so with the raw force of thousands. Not a single being. I admit it, the weary monarch muttered, eyes closing, briefly in remembrance and regret. I struck with anger. I struck with hatred. Struck sinfully. But I also struck with gladness. And I struck with determination. Gregus had no chance. But there had been no body of the traitor to burn or bury, for only a few wisps of smoke marked the final moment of he who had cursed the light among lights. Unfortunately, although the monster had paid, he had succeeded in again accursing Juris Khan's beloved kingdom to its horrific exile. Without the crystal atop the plate in the mirror, Ure had no permanent hold in the real world. When dawn broke the next morning, the entire city once more found itself cast into limbo, this time with no hope. I could not remake the crystals, you see, Khan revealed, for their formation required elements no longer available to me. Worse, I was now trapped in this chamber, unable to free myself, no matter how I tried, depending ever on my loving daughter to care for me. But even confined as he was, Juris Khan did not give up. He had all books, scrolls, and talismans to be found and brought to him. He researched spell after spell, hoping that when his kingdom returned to the mortal plane, some aid might be found. On those rare occasions, Ure did reappear. He used scrying stones to seek out any possible help that might have wandered near. And so, he had this time discovered the presence of Kentrell Dumont and the others, already within the very walls of the city. You cannot imagine my delight at finding you. Brave explorers in the heart of my own realm? I knew I could not pass up this chance. This one hope. I had to bring you to me. Kentrell saw in his mind the legions of ghostly figures guiding his group from street to street. You could have chosen a better manner, My father did what he could, Captain, Atana interjected apologetically. He could not come to you. He had to do it. Those were your people? Zael asked in a tone that indicated he required no answer. They are like the dead, and yet they are not. The master of Ure nodded grimly. Being trapped between heaven and the mortal plane has taken its toll. We are not quite alive anymore. Not quite dead either. Atana and I and those who are serving the palace suffer less so, for the spells that protect and bind this place have helped us. Yet even we will eventually turn as they, if someone does not help us soon. Someone, the fiery tressed beauty at Kentral's side murmured, gazing at him. But what can we do? The mercenary leader blurted to her. The smile she gave him seemed to swallow his heart whole. You can replace the key to light. Replace the crystal? Snapped Quosin. You said it was destroyed. Khan nodded politely to the Vajra. So we thought. So Gregus had thought. But one time in the past, when I sought help from such as you, I found instead that the key to light had not been shattered. With the mountaintop, instead, it had been cast far from its intended location, thrown down the other side of the mountain by the force of the blast. The diminutive sorcerer rubbed his bony chin. And you've not retrieved it? Surely during night, when all is in shadow. But not the shadow. That first time when we once again beheld our homeland, the very eve after the victims of the sun, I sent out a small band to get out a lay of the land, discover what might have occurred. Under cover of night, that surely would have been no difficult task. All I sought was some little knowledge, some hope of a nearby settlement. He bared his teeth. The moment the first step beyond where Namir's shade would have ended, he too burned to death. Atana placed her hand on Kentral's own, her eyes asking for understanding and assistance. We're well and truly trapped, Captain. Our world ends just beyond the walls of the city. Were I to step 1 inch farther, I would risk the flesh melting from my bones incinerating to ash. Against those eyes, that face, Captain Newmont could not struggle. He slipped his hand on top of hers, then faced Juris Khan. Can we reach the crystal? Can we get at a place in time? Hope lit the elder man's expression. You will do this for us? You will help us? I promise the king's reward for each of you if you can do this. Jodis nearly choked on his wine. The moods of the other fighters brightened. Here seemed the quest harsh but doable, with much gain to be made. At once, each volunteered, leaving only Zael and Sin silent. We don't need all to go, Kentral told the others. Gorst, I need you definitely. Jodis, you can climb well. Breck, Orlif, you can come with us also. Albor, you're in charge of the rest. Some of those to be left behind started to complain, but Khan silenced their concerns by stating, if this miracle is done for us, all shall share in the reward. I promise. Kentrell asked again about the time factor and where the gem might be found. In response to the first question, Juris Khan assured him that if they left within the hour, there would be time enough. A path cut along the mountain centuries past would serve them well in that respect. In regard to the second question, the Lord of Uri requested that his daughter retrieve a box. Moments later, when Atana had returned with a small silver container and given it to him, Khan produced for the captain a small stone of brilliant clarity, upon whose top had been etched a single ruin. This is a piece left from the shaping of the original. The rune spell ties it to the other. Hold it before you. It'll guide your way. You should depart now, his daughter informed them. She touched Kentrell's hand again. Go, with my blessing. Zio confronted him. Captain Dumont, I would like to go with you. My skills would be of use, and I know this area well. It would speed matters up some, I believe. A sage suggestion, Juris Khan declared. I thank you. Well, if he goes, then there's no need for me up that chill mountain, snapped Sin. I prefer to wait here. Their host accepted this decision also. You would do me a boon by being here, Master Sin. Perhaps, with you to aid me, I can be freed of Gregus's wicked magic. I offer you all the books and scrolls and other works gathered in my sanctum as a start for your research. And in exchange for my freedom, afterward, you may keep any that you wish. If the talk of gold and riches had stirred the hearts of Kentrell's men, the mention of so much magical knowledge did the same for the Vajeri. You're most generous, my Lord Khan. I would give anything to end this nightmare, the elder responded, his gaze turning to Captain Dumont. Is that not so, Atana? Anything, she agreed, also looking at Kentrell. The tiny gem glowed bright, an encouraging sign. Quickly folding his hand so as not to risk losing the small stone, Kentrell deposited it in the same pouch in which he also carried the brooch. He had not told Atana about finding the latter, but swore he would return it to her once the key to light had been set in its proper place. Juris Khan had given them explicit instructions about what they needed to do once they had obtained the magical gem. Kentrell knew exactly where to place it, not only to make certain that the wind did not blow it off, but also so as to catch the very first hint of sun. Only by following the instructions to the letter could he hope to keep Uri and Atana from vanishing from his life. The 5 men struggled their way around the mountain. While the path had been well carved, time had taken its toll. More than once they had been forced to leap over breaks or climb above rock falls. Orlif had nearly slipped once, but Gorst and Jodis had pulled him back before anything could happen. Much to the mercenaries' surprise, Zael proved an excellent guide. He had spoken truth when he said he knew the area well. True, the necromancer had never climbed the top of Namir, but he seemed to have a sense for how the mountain had been shaped. Torch in hand, Kentrell now followed Zael, which meant that as the fierce cold wind blew the necromancer's cloak about, the captain had a good look every once in a while at the mysterious pouch. Something about its contents still bothered him. He almost felt as if the bag stared back at him. The notion struck Kentrell as ludicrous, but still he could not shake off the sensation of being watched. "There is an outcropping here that we must go over," Zael informed them. "Gorst." The brawny fighter, now clad in a simple cloak of his own, slipped ahead with a length of rope. With Kentrel's aid, the pair secured the rope. Then, one by one, each man worked his way up. Once over, Kentrel called a pause, while he checked the tiny stone again. This time, it flared so bright that he almost expected to see the key to light sitting on the ledge before them. "It must be close," he muttered. "Yes, we are in luck," replied the spellcaster. "Juriscon thought it to have fallen much farther away." "How long do you reckon we still have?" Zael peered up at the night sky. It had taken them several hours to reach this point. The shadow of Numir had been swallowed by the dark some time ago. "Just enough if we find the key soon. This side of the mountain is not so harsh as a climb as that which overlooks Ure." They moved on, steeling themselves against the cold night. Kentrel retrieved the small stone again, correcting their path. Minutes later, they literally stumbled over the magical gemstone. Dirt and rock, possibly from Gregus Matzi's murderous spell, all buried the artifact. Only when Kentrel turned in a circle, trying to find out why it seemed that the party should go no farther, did he kick up a few loose pieces of rock and uncover one glittering edge. Although the only nearby illumination consisted of their meager torches, the key to light still shone like a miniature star. Zael bent down, digging up the gem. It fit in the cup of his hands, a perfectly shaped crystal. "Must be worth a fortune," grunted Bearded Brick. "What do you think we could get for it, Captain?" "From Ure, more than you could ever get selling it elsewhere," Kentrel retorted, glaring at the mercenary. The thought of betraying Atana filled him with anger. Zael quickly played peacemaker. "No one would think to do anything less than what we intended, Captain. Now, we must hurry. Dawn will be too quick in coming." With the necromancer carrying the artifact, they began their final ascent. Gore secured all lines for them and acted as a counterweight now and then when they needed to swing from place to place. Kentrel actually found the way far more easy than he would have expected. The mountains of his homeland would have caused him much more difficulty. If not for the fact that the people of Ure had been cursed to remain hidden in the shadow of this very peak, they could have easily rectified their own situation. At last, they neared the top. As the group paused on a larger ledge, Zael handed the key to light over to Kentrel. "Say, Captain." "What is it, Jodis?" "What happens to the rest of the party if we don't get this thing in the right place? They disappear with the rest?" Kentrel's gaze shifted to Zael, who shrugged and answered, "It is best if we do not find out." After a few moments more searching, both Captain Dumont and the necromancer came to the same conclusion regarding the most appropriate location. Unfortunately, that location meant a treacherous climb up a dangerous rise, some 300 feet and more. Although only a small part of the tip of Namir, both agreed that based on Khan's calculations, it would be best. "I'll do it alone," Kentrel informed the others. Gorst, however, would not hear it. Although he had remained fairly quiet up until now, Kentrel's suggestion stirred him to protest. "You need an anchor. We'll tie the end of a rope around our waists. You fall, I'll catch you. Honest." Knowing better than trying to argue at this point, Kentrel agreed to let the giant join in the climb. In truth, it made him feel safer knowing that Gorst would be there. They had always fought side by side in many battles, and could always depend on each other's aid. If anyone could be trusted up there, it would have to be Gorst. Kentrell gritted his teeth hard as he began. After a fairly simple journey, even a relatively easy search for the artifact, this last bit threatened to rip victory from their grasps. The wind felt 100 times more fierce, and nowhere could he get a hold that satisfied him. Out of fear that it would mean slipping and falling to his death, Kentrell pushed faster and faster, praying that he would reach the top before his luck ran out. With the natural skill he seemed to have for everything, Gorst moved more than kept his pace. Kentrell imagined his friend gouging handholds out of the rock face. Likely it would have been better if the much larger mercenary had gone up by himself, but then it would have been his captain who would have protested. Kentrell's fingers finally stretched over the upper edge. He had to rebrace himself when ice caused his initial grip to falter, but after that he managed to pull himself up with a little trouble. Peering around, Kentrell studied the immediate area. Large enough for 4 men to stand, it definitely offered the first place on Namir to receive the sun's kiss. With the agility of a mountain goat, Gorst climbed up after him, thick hair flying in his face. The other mercenary gave Kentrell a big grin. From his belt pouch, Captain Dumont removed the artifact. He looked the vicinity over, not wanting the key to fall from his perch the moment the climbers had returned to Ure. "There?" suggested Gorst. There proved to be a tiny outcropping shaped somewhat like a bowl turned on its side. It faced the right direction, and it fit in with what Juris Khan's directions, but was not quite large enough for the gem to fit. Taking his dagger, Kentrell began chopping at the spot. He only needed to remove a little of the frozen earth below. Then he could securely place the artifact within and be finished with this chill place. His dagger slowly bit into the icy ground. Chips of rock, hard dirt flew away. The tip of the blade scratched at something white. Kentrell worked at it, trying to remove the obstacle to his success. He swore with his dagger he had unearthed a bone. There existed little doubt in his head that this bone had once belonged to one of the 5 unfortunates who had been murdered by Gregis Matzi. Now fate had let the dead sorcerer again hinder his plans to free Ure from this curse. Try as he might, Kentrell could not dig the bone out, and no other spot atop Namir would do. "Let me try." Gorst took Kentrell's place, pulling out his own blade. For many men, the giant's dagger would have also served as a short sword. Gorst chipped away, using his prodigious might, making progress where even his captain could not. Finally, enough of the bone, likely from the forearm, had been exposed that Gorst seized it in his huge hands and began to pull. The massive fighter grunted with strain, and the muscles and veins on his neck throbbing. The frozen ground around the area cracked. The bone came free. With a startled yell, "Oh!" Gorst fell backwards, slipping on the icy mountaintop. He began to slide toward the edge. "Oh!" Thrusting the artifact into the newly created hole, Kentrell wrapped one arm around the outcropping, then braced himself against it. With his other hand, he seized the rope, linking him to Gorst, and pulled with all his might. The other mercenary's head and arms went over the side. However, as the rope went taut, he spun sideways, sending one leg over, but giving one hand the chance to reach for a hold. Gasping, "Oh!" Kentrell tugged with all of his might, fighting exhaustion, gravity, and Gorst's not inconsiderable weight. The arm that held tight on the outcropping shrieked with pain, but held. Gorse lost his first attempt at finding a grip, nearly skidding off into the air in the process. Only Kentrell kept him from doing so, the captain throwing his own weight back to counter as best as he could that of the larger mercenary. On his second attempt, the giant managed to grab hold of a small rocky area. With care, Gorse pulled himself to safety, for once gasping from the effort. The key, he called to Kentrell. Where it should be, barring another sorcerer blasting away what remained of the mountaintop. It would stay there for some time to come. Juris Khan had also indicated that even on days of rain or snow, the artifact would somehow be able to do its duty. The key to light twinkled suddenly, almost as if stirring to life. For a moment, Kentrell wondered what inner magic would cause it to do so. But then it occurred to him that not only did the gemstone look brighter, but he could also now see his surroundings in better detail. He looked over his shoulder. They had cut this even closer than he had thought. Dawn had come. The artifact flared like a sun itself, seeming to take in every bit of illumination around it. Kentrell watched it a few seconds more, then hurried as best as he could across the icy top of the mirror. The light of day encroached upon where Yurei had sat protected. In the distance, the jungle seemed to open its green canopy. Nearer, the rocky landscape leading the fabled realm took on distinct shapes. And Yurei? As the captain watched, sunlight hit the city where Atana prayed for his success. Sunlight touched where the shadow had kept her safe. And in the end, sunlight failed. And under the impenetrable and impossible shade of the mountain, the walled city stood triumphant.